Welcome to another episode of Football Performance with MKF. Today we have Mudrek from the Banksia Tigers Football Club.
Hi Michael.
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Good to have you on board. Thanks for having me.
No problems at all. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, playing football, management, the whole lot.
Yeah, where do I start? So I'm 29 years old at the moment, still playing the game. I started a little bit late. I started when I was about 15 years old. And then I started off playing with a team called Hurstville Minotaurs in the Division 1. So we used to be called Premier League, Super League and then Division 1. So it's probably like your MPL 3.
Yep.
Yeah, so I started off my career from there, trying to build up, play MPL. Ended up playing for teams like Inter Lions, Hurstville Zagreb, St George, Sutherland Sharks, all those sort of teams. And gained plenty of experience. And as well, alongside that, I started coaching. I started coaching at an early age. I started coaching when I was probably about 17, 18,
wow.
just with my my coaches and my role models, helping them out in their academies, their private sessions, all that sort of stuff. Just learning as much as I can about the game. And then went from there.
So early on from your starting to play football, from 15 straight away into coaching.
Yeah, I think I have a passion for helping people. So I felt like everything that I learned, I wanted to pass it on to your grassroots, and then that's my passion still lives on till now, and that's something that I'm passing on at my club now that I'm coaching at Banksia Tigers.
100%, and you've passed on that information so well that you won the championship this year.
Yeah, I know. So it's been a very successful year this year. We done the double in Premier League, so the Premier League first grades won and the Premier League reserves won as well.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. And we had a lot of success in winning. I think it was about 6 titles this year out of 8 grand finals. So I think it was the most successful year in the club's history.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so hopefully we can build on from there.
100%. Tell us a little bit about the sort of management you did at the start of the season with COVID and everything happening. How did you prep the team to get them into such a title-winning team, such a strong team?
Yeah, so well, my job at Banksia Tigers. So in terms of the Premier League, I'm more of I'm a player. In terms of my role at the club, I'm a technical director, especially for the youth. So I take care of. I didn't coach one specific team. I was out there helping. So say we have about, I think, 10 youth teams from 12s all the way to 18s, making sure that all the coaches have structured plans rather than just going on the pitch and just pulling out any session that comes to their mind, just having a couple of shots, or just playing a game and going home. So there's a bit of structure. There's a bit of structure, bringing in the MPL experience into the game while keeping it still at a local level. In terms of COVID, it was a bit of a tricky one because we started pre-season for a couple of weeks or a month it was, and then COVID hit and said, you know what, that's it. Everything's stopping. Lockdown, no one's allowed to do anything. So from my side, what I've done is I prepared a plan and I sent it to our coaches so they can pass down to their players so they can go in and do individual sessions and then keep fit and keep strong. So in hope that the season starts again, and when it does, we can hit the ground running straight away.
100%. So you already had that preparation ready for when COVID was about to end, so you can get straight into a full swing.
That's exactly right, and I think that was important for us because having such a long break and then going in again with I think it was only a couple of weeks before the season started, so we needed to make sure our players were fit, strong. Just not only in terms of them being fit as well, is making sure they don't get injured when they come in and playing at 110% high intensity.
100%, and especially as a technical director, you're also doing the programs and everything for the teams. Tell us some of the other roles as a technical director for some of the people that don't know.
Yeah, so in terms of a technical director role at a local football club is, like I said, is making sure that all the teams have structured training sessions, making sure that we have injury prevention plans, making sure that players understand dieting as well, even something like that. Making sure that they have a structure that they can follow and look at certain pathways that certain players can have. So for example, you might have your B grade players. We can set up a pathway for them to eventually become A grade players. We have a pathway for our A grade players to eventually hopefully push them on to NPL. And then we have, for example, our under 18s, once they stop playing in the youth grades, is to hopefully push them on to go and play in our Premier League team. So we have certain pathways and structures that we're setting up so that the development doesn't stop. So it's not you're just playing your season, ends there, go home. So you're always developing, always looking for ways to improve our players and keep the success rolling.
100%. And that brings us nicely into the next question, which is for any young kids at about that sort of 12, 10-year-old range, what sort of tips do you have if they're just thinking about starting to get into soccer or looking to get into soccer and starting to sort of progress from the CB, go into A sort of level?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for them would be, first of all, if they've never played before, is come and join a team. Just get enjoyment of the game, learn the game, make sure you're in a fun, positive environment. I think that's important. I think if you're in that environment, you'll be able to progress naturally. Yep. Once you've hit a certain stage where it's you're starting to get a little bit more competitive, you're in the A grades and you want to focus on maybe going to MPL,
yep,
you need to be a little bit self-driven. I think that's very important because a lot of kids these days that I see are driven by their parents and their parents'
yep,
dreams. So maybe their dad was the professional back in the day and he wants their son to be a professional. Making sure the kids are self-driven themselves and working hard. Work ethic is a big thing because technical ability, it can only take you so far and talent can only take you so far. So without that work ethic, I don't think you will be reaching your goals.
100%. It's all internal motivation, or as I say, intrinsic motivation, rather than external, which is the parents or even just playing for trophies and playing for the glory and stuff. Right. It's all internal, because if you're playing internal, it's going to make you better on the field as well.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
In terms of any sort of nutrition stuff, what do you recommend for sort of younger players just heading into a season?
Yeah, so we just look at basic things. So in terms of diets, we look at, just explaining what foods to eat, what foods not to eat. Yep. In terms of pre-game, post-game. Your post-game, we tell them make sure your intake of protein is high because your muscles need to recover.
Yep.
Your pre-game is you want to make sure you're carb loading, drinking
yep,
a lot of water,
yep,
making sure you're sipping water, you're not sculling water. All those small little tips that I think I didn't have when I was playing when I was younger, and I think pushing it to the younger generation is they're going to have that in the back of their mind, and I think that's going to help their performance on the pitch.
100%, and you brought up a couple good points. So pre-game, so even the night before, carb loading is so important because you're building your energy stores to last the whole 90 minutes. And even before the game, making sure you have enough carbs is so important because you could be running on the field and you don't have enough carbs. Your body can't really process changing energy systems around. So now you're stuck with a little bit of fatigue because you don't have enough energy reserves, and the body doesn't just go, we don't have enough energy, let's start burning fat. There's a longer transition between the energy systems to switch over. So we want to make sure we're getting enough energy from our carbs, but then also having enough protein. During the week you're training, you're doing a lot of sessions, building muscles requires protein. And I know it's the same as me, my parents didn't really care about nutrition. It was like whatever wog food was chucked on the table, exactly you eat. Right. If you don't have enough protein, you don't really sort of grow in size, as I say, or grow the muscles. And that becomes a little bit important later on because when you're doing sprints and any sort of heavy work, the more muscle you have, the more power you're going to generate on the field. The stronger you get, the fitter you get as well.
That's exactly right. I think more for us, it's more about education and knowledge for the players.
Yep.
So giving them that information, if they want to go and take that on board, you're going to see that on the pitch. They're going to see that on the pitch. And when they see the results, then they're going to take that to the next level. They're going to ask more questions and they're going to make sure they apply it in their day-to-day lives as well.
100%, and I think the education piece is so important because now you've got the opportunity of helping kids go from potentially having junk food and takeaway food to them thinking about, do I really want that Macca's, or can I have this alternate food source that's going to be more nutritious for me as I've got the game on the weekend as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think these days, it's in a click of a button. You can go online and you can check plenty of different types of meals that are, like you said, alternatives to your Macca's, yep, and all that sort of stuff that still tastes good.
100%. And having such a good team spirit around that nutrition and diet, which has led to a lot of your younger teams winning a lot of their championships as well.
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, our focus hasn't really been on winning trophies, because for us is setting up that club structure, that culture, yep, and we think that winning is going to come anyway on its own. So if you're going to teach people all these sort of things and set up pathways and talk about diet, talk about injury prevention, all this sort of stuff, you're going to go and be successful anyway. Like we look at last year, for example, I think we recorded like 3 injuries in our youth graders in 10 teams, and I think that's probably credit to the program that we put in place.
Yep, 100%.
And then now going in and playing in a lot of synthetic fields, we have to think about, okay, now what do we need to do? What kind of exercises? Do we need to change our warm-ups? Do we need to implement resistance bands? Do we need to tell our players to buy different boots now, maybe artificial ground boots? So we're always looking for ways to improve. We're always looking for ways to assist our players and then hopefully push them forward.
100%. And now you've provided all the information to them and you've got players that want to move up grades. What do you look for in a player before you sort of promote them to the next level, for example?
Yeah, so the first things we look for is obviously they've got to be technically good and talented. But beside that, we look at work ethic. I think work ethic is very important, as well as discipline, because you can be the best player in the team, but if you don't have the work ethic, I feel like there's going to be a wall that you're going to hit. So if you've hit that wall, you're never going to go past that wall. So I think work ethic and discipline, commitment to the team. You know, I like to have a chat with players, see where their minds at. Because certain players, if they think that they've reached their heights and that's it, they can't go past that wall. I'd like to explore and find gaps into where I can open their mind. And if I feel like I can't open their mind, I think that they might not be ready yet.
Definitely, especially that mental attitude as well, because a lot of players are sort of growing up with like a different attitude when it comes to football now because of all the sport you see on TV, all the flashy stuff, social media now as well. How do you sort of combat that sort of stigma now behind football with your younger players?
Look, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think the biggest thing, and it goes back, is to sometimes results in certain things that you're saying. So it could be, for example, or belief, I would say. Say, for example, that we're working on a certain system that we want to play as a team. First of all, they might not believe in it, but once they believe in it, and it starts working, then they start believing what you're saying. And when they start believing in what you're saying, they're going to listen and they're going to respect what you have to say, and they buy into what you're trying to say. And I think that is the difference between taking players from here to the next level.
100%. For any of the younger players listening, that's so insightful, because a lot of players sometimes are really good technically, but again, they feel like something's holding them back from getting into the B, A, and then potentially youth and so forth from there as well. So that's extremely insightful for any of the young players. So it's a lot of the attitude that gets built almost at home, even with some of the, say, kicks against the wall, some drills at home, some of the words that are used at home as well.
I feel like if players don't do their own training as well, I think that's a blocker as well, because at the end of the day, you have thousands of kids training twice a week, or maybe 3 times a week. If you're not doing extra, what's going to make you different to the other kids? You know, when you have other kids doing private academies, one-on-one sessions, their own sessions at the park, you know, they can go 100%. Online on your YouTube, find any session and then go implement it at the park and improve
100%.
yourself.
And that's like we mentioned in a previous interview with Ibrahim, there are kids in Brazil, kids in South America, kids in Europe as well that train 8-9 hours a day. So that's more than some kids train in a whole month here, that these kids train per day. So it's just the amount of exposure that you're around the ball as well, which builds the technical skills and it builds that desire and that work ethic to play on the field as well.
That's exactly right. And I always tell parents this. It's like, you know, if you're you know, you might have a 90-minute game. You got to count how many times your son is going to touch the ball in that 90-minute game. Usually they say it's 1 to 2 minutes in that whole 90 minutes. That's not much.
100%.
So the rest of the thing is off the ball. So what you do within that 1 or 2 minutes is very important. So if you go back to the training ground and convert that, if you're training for 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever it is, how many times are you touching the ball as well? If you're not touching the ball many times, then you 100% need to do your second, your third, your fourth session, add your 5th session, do your double sessions. You know, whatever time that you have at home that you can do, you should fit extra sessions in.
100%, and those extra sessions lead into that confidence boost going into the game, because like what you said, maybe 1-2 minutes, that's enough for maybe one through ball. You put that one through ball through, your striker scores. Because you've had the previous experience, you've done the training sessions. Otherwise you might not be confident. You look for a back pass or a side pass, the attacking opportunity has sort of dissolved, and then you got to restart and play again. So it all plays onto the confidence in the pitch as well, when you have more practice sessions almost in the park, at home, wherever you can fit it in. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And especially players that aspire to go up and move from, for example, local level to NPL level, there's a bit of a gap. So you have to, if you don't put in the hard yards, then you're going to find yourself falling short.
100%, especially if you do make it and you see the work ethic of the other people around, you can tell the difference. You might be here, but everyone's sort of up here, and it takes a lot longer for you to build to get up to that stage.
That's exactly right, exactly.
And then talking about parents, you mentioned parents. For any parents listening to help like their kids at home, do you have any tips for the parents?
Yeah, I think positive. Be positive with your kids, whether it's your boy or your girl. Be positive, supportive, support them. Don't push them over the limit. Don't try and make them apply what you used to apply.
Yep.
Put yourself in their shoes. They're in a new generation, so they think differently to back in the
100%.
days. You know, back in the days, I think players were a bit more tougher.
Yep.
I think now, making sure we've got to make sure our players don't feel that they're entitled.
Yep.
They're not entitled to be in the A grade. They're not entitled to be playing NPL. Let them work. Let them get there. Let them earn their stripes rather than
100%.
be feeling entitled. Because when you start feeling entitled, and I see it a lot, as soon as you get rejected, it's like the whole world is collapsing.
Yep.
And football, in reality, especially if you want to start pushing NPL professional, it's a cutthroat industry.
Yep.
And I think a lot of parents don't know that until they get there.
And that's the thing, and they sort of haven't brought up that child to have that strong mindset, because it's all about mindset. The tougher players, they weren't really exposed to social media, and you see, I call it instant gratification. Click of the button, bang, it's already happening. Happens with ordering food, happens with anything. Click the button, it all happens.
Yeah.
Players were a lot tougher because there wasn't really anything to gratify instantly. Now, players, the younger generation, you can just swipe and sort of everything happens.
Yeah. Yeah, so they want everything in the click of a button or straight away in the speed of light, I guess, if you want to call it. But yeah, you got to work hard. If you don't work hard, you won't reap the rewards. It's as simple as that. Work ethic, be supportive, and I think the biggest thing other than being supportive is making sure that they're committed. Teaching them those values of commitment, having a good culture around them. And you know what? If they don't enjoy it, don't push them past that point. Because I think if you don't enjoy it and you don't want it, you're not going to get to where you want to get. Because I've seen parents where they push their kids and they don't want it. They eventually get 14, 15, 16, they stop playing.
Yep, I've heard so many stories of that as well. They get to almost an NPL stage and then they're just over it. I don't care anymore.
That's exactly right. And then what would have happened? The parent would have wasted their time, money, all that sort
resources.
of stuff. So let them enjoy it. If they enjoy it, they will pursue it.
100%. And now the next thing I'm going to mention is sort of like an iffy topic, because I see a lot of parents almost sometimes blasting their kids from the sideline when they're watching the games, and it's sort of disturbing for me to see, because I know my dad was tough on me when I was training, but on the field, silence. Not a single word was said. The coach was there. He'd go to the coach, how's it going? And then he'd go, sit down, just watch me play. And then at the end of the game, he'd go, oh, you did good passes, well done. Or you could have taken a shot here, we'll try that in the training session. Never said a word. But I see now, especially in the younger games, there's so many parents, go do this, go. You hear the parents more than you hear the coach on the side of the field.
So I think that's actually a big thing. And in all honesty, it confuses the player. Because the coach has told the player one thing, and then the parent is telling the player another thing, and then the player ends up saying, do you want me to listen to you, or do you want me to listen to you? What do you want me to do? And then that's half the reason why players quit and they stop playing. So my advice would be just be positive. When they do something good, tell them well done. If they do something wrong, unlucky, next time, head up, keep going. You know what I mean? And then you can, like you said, give them a bit of criticism at the end, say we need to improve on this, we need to improve on that. First touch, passing, shooting, whatever the case may be, and you work on it.
That's right. And it's all about encouraging the player to continue developing. Because a lot of the times, anything negative that's said, that especially at a young age, it sort of halts them immediately, because they're like, oh no, like why is he saying that? What's happening? I sort of don't feel like playing anymore.
And I think the biggest thing with that is players end up being scared to make mistakes.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen is when a player is scared to make mistakes, they won't play naturally anymore. They won't show what they're able to do.
Yep.
So if you're scared to make mistakes, you're not going to end up playing and showing your full potential.
And it's almost noticeable when you're watching it on the side of the field, where a player's sort of not confident. You can see sometimes he might go for that fancy pass, but now he's sort of concerned, oh, if I go for that pass, I might get yelled at, or I might this, or I might that. And he ends up losing the ball because he's thinking too much rather than just naturally letting the flow of the game go with him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's a very important note that you mentioned. Make sure you're supportive, positive, don't put it on the player, because I think the biggest thing is them getting confused, and if they're going to get confused, they're going to end up being very, very frustrated. 100%.
And in terms of any sort of training sessions that they can do at home with their parents, so with the parents listening, is there any sort of training you'd recommend, like kicking against the wall, maybe taking some shots on goal, some passing?
Yeah, look, I think if you have a wall, then you won't need anyone.
Yep.
You can do so many exercises on the wall, especially working on your passing and your first touch. I used to spend hours on the wall working on my left foot, my weak foot, even working on my good foot, which is my right one, just working on your touches, even juggling to the wall,
Yep.
making sure you're keeping your touch up. You know, you start even advancing that. You start checking your shoulder before passing and receiving the ball.
So important,
you know what I
that
mean?
shoulder check as well.
Yeah. So you can. There's always ways. If you have cones, you bring in the cones and you pretend it's a defender and you start checking away from the cone. So there's always ways to advance that. But just starting that and training on your own, I think, is the first step. Once you've got that, then there's so many resources available online, or you can even contact certain people like
Yep.
yourself or myself, and we'll be happy to help.
100%. Anything mindset related to finish off that you could probably pass on some information to the younger generations, to maybe some parents,
Yeah.
to help their kids as well?
Yeah, in terms of mindset, I think it's very important to be self-driven. Set yourself some goals. I think it's important because if you don't set yourself some goals, you're gonna kind of
Yep.
be lost, or you don't know where you're going. Where's the pathway that you're going towards?
Yep.
So set yourself some goals. If your touch is not good, okay, my first goal is to get my touch. If my shooting is not good,
Yep.
I need to fix up my shooting. If my commitment to my training is not good, all right, my goal this season is to make sure my commitment to my training is 100%,
100%.
to the best that I can.
Yep.
So goal setting is very important.
Perfect. Thank you, Mudrek. Really
No worries.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.